Welcome back to That Rugby podcast. We're back again. Look, we've missed a few weeks, a couple episodes, just purely I've been travelling, ended up in America, moved flats over in London, and I then got sick. So it was all a bit of a fuck around. But we've got here, and we've got 2 weeks into Super Rugby, and we've got to the prickly end of the Six Nations. So we thought, look, you know what? Let's jump on. Let's get some consistency going again, like a few of the Super Rugby teams have shown, and let's have a podcast and discuss everything that's going on in the first 2 weeks. Hughesy, let's start with Super Rugby. I mean, what a start! I will say, what a start to Super Rugby for 2025. What a product! What a, I guess, monumental year for the game, and it's been a great start. What are your thoughts?
I think whoever has made the decision at Rugby HQ about the Melbourne Rebels is feeling a sense of great vindication right now. You know, at least early signs of that. Jesus, what a start to the year. I saw a stat that viewership was up about 10% from this time last year, which is a great start to that. You know, obviously there's a new broadcast deal coming into effect soon as well, where they've got more money in. So Stan Sports could be feeling good about it as well. But looking around, it's an average of something like 70 points being scored a game, something like that. It's crazy. It's nuts. And, you know, yes, a lot of it's to do with a bit of that fatigue element coming back in. It is the start of the year, so it's very hot and warm still in some of these places. You know, not in Dunedin, but everywhere else. And I think obviously we're also seeing that little concentration of talent, but yeah, I think some of the emphasis on keeping ball in play has borne fruit. We could see what the result of that is. It's more rugby. It's more you know, fatigue is playing more of a factor, and we're getting some magnificent results out of. I've been thoroughly entertained these first 2 weeks.
Yeah, I would say, and I'd back that up, that defence has decidedly become optional into rugby. Because obviously, you look at the teams and the games that have happened. I think the Chiefs are the only team to keep a team below 20 points, and that was the Blues in that first round matchup away in Auckland. So I kind of go, look, defences are going to click on, and we're not going to see these big score lines, but what we are seeing is really tight games, which is awesome. Like, you know, I think the biggest score difference is 20 points when there was Reds and Moana Pacifica. And even in that game, specifically that game, Moana Pacifica had the ball for more. They had more running meters.
65% of
Exactly.
65% of the time.
So the scoreline doesn't quite reflect the actual game that you watched, for those that watched it, because it actually was a tighter affair than the 20 points that you see there. That's a lot of credit to the Reds, who we'll talk about soon. But I just thought, when I was looking at all of these results,
I think actually the biggest result was the Chiefs Crusaders.
Chiefs Crusaders 25 points. Yeah, correct. Me not looking at that, and again, that's historic because I read.
And it doesn't matter if that one was a 25 differential, because that's the Crusaders. So we're very happy for that.
No one's bothered about that. So again, and that game as well went into halftime. I think it was a 2 or 3 point differential.
It was super close at halftime. I'm surprised it ended up that way.
And again, as we talk about it, and we'll talk more about this Chiefs team. This Chiefs team looking like hot at the moment. So hot, I wouldn't want to touch them. And they're running into a Brumbies team now that are probably a little bit down on confidence. But this Chiefs team, to start with them, they are by far the team setting the pace early on.
Oh yeah, big time. To go into Auckland, you know, the site of their defeat only a couple months ago, exercise some of those demons and walk away with a win in week one had got to felt pretty good. Especially Damian McKenzie, obviously been under the microscope since sort of inheriting that All Blacks 10 jersey, and having some, pretty harsh critique of his play, has looked like an absolute demon, and one of the nastiest 50-22s you'll ever see.
Yeah, he stood up especially, and I love what the Chiefs are doing. Their team hasn't changed dramatically from last year, and that's probably a sign of good things of building that momentum from last year. But Clayton McMillan's got them firing, especially on defense, which we've talked about in these early rounds. It looks like if you can defend enough, you'll probably win the game. So to keep the
Yeah.
Blues team to 14 points. Now the Blues, let's jump onto them quickly, because saying that they only scored 14 points in that first round, they only scored 21 points against the Highlanders and then lost that game and are now 0-2. Now, I'm not screaming to the rooftop yet that this Blues team's out of contention. This Blues team's a hella good team. Like, we both picked them to finish first. I'm not getting overexcited or anything like that, but I'm starting to feel something that I didn't think I was going to feel, and that's potentially this Blues team being shit, and I'm not against it.
Yeah, they're definitely vulnerable. Look, the Waratahs have only played one game, and they've outscored the Blues in the Blues 2 games, right? And then who had the bye this week?
The Reds. You had the bye this week, and then the Reds had the bye the first
had
week.
the bye in the first week. And the Reds have outscored them in their one game because they scored 56 points. So I don't think that the Blues, I think, have got the lowest points for in the entire competition right now. We love to see it. From an Australian perspective, we love to see it. We'd love to see a vulnerable New Zealand. But then we also then have, we got to talk about them. We got to talk about them. The Highlanders, right? The Highlanders. Week 1 in Allianz Stadium, nearly taken out the kids with the fresh kicks, the Waratahs. You know, all these shiny new toys. Dan McKellar's first bout, won at the death by the Waratahs, right? By Sifo Amona, just incredible try. That if you haven't seen him, he an absolute wrecking ball of a human being. Like, that is a man that is putting his hand up for early call, but putting his hand up for Wallabies contention with how he played. Like, certainly a good bench prop option. What we've seen is some good depth coming through the Waratahs front row ranks. We were worried about that. Wallabies front row ranks. We were worried about that last year. Against some depth this year, so no panicking. But then they take on the Blues. Now, they are at home, but still, what a game! And is it Finn Hurley? Is that the fullback?
Fullback, yeah, Finn Hurley.
Oh, it's incredible. I watched that game, about 2/3 of it, and watched the highlights of the rest of it. Incredible presence. Just knew exactly where to be at exactly the right moment. But I don't think we can go. We can talk about the Highlanders' success without talking about, and correct me on my pronunciation here. Is it Tabanawai?
Yep, that's the one.
I got it. There you go. There you go. What a beast.
Yeah, look, he's come up through the ranks of New Zealand rugby. Like, I know he was in the Canterbury Academy. He's played for the Marcos. He wants to be an All Black, and there is no doubt that he's putting his hands up. And it's going to be really interesting how the selectors go with, hey, look, Jordie Barrett's first choice 12, obviously.
Yeah.
But he's not playing in New Zealand this year. And if you get another 12 that's putting their hand up in New Zealand, can we actually start to twist the narrative of New Zealand rugby back to New Zealand rugby? And what I'm saying there is, hey, look, you guys have got all these options with, your overseas one-off years, but actually, is it better to stay in New Zealand and play good rugby in New Zealand? And if they do take a risk,
the All Blacks jersey,
exactly. Yeah. And I'm not saying Jordie Barrett plays fantastic rugby for Leinster, but I sit there and I go, there's an option here where Jordie Barrett falls out a flavour of that number 12 jersey with the work that he's doing.
It's then still beneficial to the player. Then it can still go overseas and make that money. They just need to then make that decision with the knowledge that comes with a cost in terms of national representation. And we've seen that with the Wallabies, right? Joe Schmidt has made it very clear that if you're heading overseas, you're not going to be in his plans. At least if you're heading overseas next year. Now, I'll be interested to see what happens with the Len Ikitau situation, because he's going over to, I think, Exeter on like a 6-month contract, very short term.
Similar to what Jordie Barrett's doing.
Yeah, so then if he then comes, is he good? And that's actually going to be interesting for this upcoming Wallabies campaign against Alliance. Ikitau is going overseas, but not this year. It's next year. So what happens there? Will those that are staying in Australia get priority there as well? Speaking of Australian rugby,
just before we move on, sorry, I also
just
wanted to mention Finn Hurley as well. Does it remind you a little bit of a fellow short blonde lock player that started at fullback? It was a little bit electric. It is now potentially the starting fly half for the All Blacks, Dane McKenzie. It was a lot. I was like flashbacks coming on.
Yes, I did have to say that. Excuse me. I thought I was watching a Chiefs game at first, and Mackenzie was back playing fullback. And then I readjusted my glasses and realized that no, that game had already happened. Yes, I did notice some of the parallels there that flowed beyond just the golden locks. In the manner of gameplay, and I think as well the key element to Damien McKenzie is his smile. I think Finn Hurley has got an equally good
An
set of
equally
pearly
good
whites.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah,
But yes,
it's
your
a key
wallet.
part. It's
Your
a key part of the confidence. A key part of the confidence of playing. And since you ruined my segue before, I'm going to do it now. Speaking of confidence and a team playing with some confidence, let's talk about the Western Force. Right, 90 points scored over 2 games. Right, they did concede 86, but whatever. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. The important thing for me, the important stat here is 5,062 days, which is how long it's been since they've beaten the Brumbies in Canberra. As well, the important thing about that is that the Western Force had a chance to just be the Western Force again this game. They got out to a 21-0 lead and then 28-7. They had a chance when the Brumbies came back to just be the Western Force, and that this game slipped by them. And no one would have been surprised. People probably would have been a little bit disappointed, but everyone would have been like, it's the Force. Instead, what the Western Force did is stood up to those bullies down in Canberra and said, you know what? Having none of that. Having none of that. We're here to play. Chopsticks is leading us around the park, Ben Donaldson, and he's going to steer us to victory. And that's what they did. They stayed the course. Man, I love what I'm seeing out of this Western Force team. Dylan Peach to the Western Force might be one of the most impactful signings in this season of Super Rugby, because he and Darcy Swain as well, both of them have been huge for the Western Force in the first 2 games.
Yeah, look, as you said, I think Western Force, the biggest number for them is 2. They've won 2 games from 2 games.
Yeah.
With opportunities, as you said, to lose both of those games. Ben Donaldson winning it for them against Moana Pacifica in the first one, and then taking it from a good Brumbies side in the second one. You kind of go, shit, like if they can sort some of their defensive settings out and get some of that work down, their attack is on fire.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's going wrong with their defense, because when you've got Carlos Tizano making fucking 34 tackles without a miss,
Yeah,
how are you conceding that many points? But it's one of those situations there where I think, if the Force can keep this going, and again, they were good not to lose that game against Moana, good not to lose this game against the Brumbies. If they can start ticking those games over and win the games that they should win, and even drop a couple, they could see themselves in that top 6 race pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And as you said, the talent that they've brought in is making a clear difference, and it's taken a couple of years to make a difference. And they weren't big pilfers that they got from, the Melbourne Rebels. They didn't take a lot. I don't even know if they've got one player from the Melbourne Rebels, but they've gone hard with those players that have Super Rugby success experience with the Darcy Swains, the Nick Whites. As much as we can talk about Nick White, again had another good game going back to his old territory. So I just think the Force are moving in such the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I want to talk about 2 things from this. First is Tizano. One of the things rugby is lacking, you can say, is the off the field personalities, right? Like you look at your NRL, you even look at AFL for what you can hear of it, but you more broadly, you look overseas, right? Especially to the NBA and the NFL. The biggest draw cards for some of these games are the off the field stuff that these players get up to, or the things that they do. But notably, you look at Drive to Survive, and people falling in love with characters like Danny Rick, from what they got from him there, and his personality, not just his driving, but what he did off the field. Tizano, in this last off season, I'm not sure if you know this, he got diagnosed with ADHD, and he's made a YouTube series and he's talked about it and how much that's helped him mentally play the game. But also as part of his off-season preparation, he either he was told by Rugby Australia or recommended, or he decided that he needed to put on 7 kilos of mass, 7 kilos of lean mass, right? And so he's done a whole web series explaining to young rugby players how to do that, and the safe ways to put on weight, diet tips, exercise, all that kind of stuff. And that's absolutely brilliant. That's the kind of stuff we need that'll build the game up, that'll keep the younger generations interested. Because look, at the end of the day, we follow our teams, but we're hardcore, right? your casual fan more often than not follows players, which is one of the reasons why the biggest years of Super Rugby AU were when Israel Folau was involved, because people followed him as a player. That was just because he was such a good player on the field. But people follow names, and one of the other ways to build up your name is through this off the field stuff. So I absolutely love that initiative from Tizano, and love what I'm seeing from the Western Force generally. The second thing I want to touch on is that we have to acknowledge the Brumbies were not playing at full strength. Is what it is, but we have a certain standard of the Brumbies now, and I think they'll probably be very disappointed. 5,062 days is a hell of a streak to keep up, and to have it broken is is a tough one.
Yeah, I think we're going to be talking about a lot of teams who have that issue where they're not at full strength, especially for your Australian side, because there will be a plan to, obviously you want to perform in this, but you've got the biggest tour in rugby for 12 years for you guys to coming around in the British and Irish line. So you can't expect Australian rugby to not want to have a little whisper into Stephen Larkham's ear and go, hey, Noel Olsea is still currently our main man. As much as we'd love to see that match up against good old Ben Donaldson, just rest him this week, and so on and so forth.
Play it safe rather than sorry.
Exactly. Yeah. So I imagine it's going to be a bit of that and managing across the board. That in my Hurricanes, as we haven't mentioned them yet, which is a surprise, not at full strength yet. Again, a sophomore more missing, a couple other players missing. 1-1. Look, people laughed at me. People laughed at me, and I get it. They'll laugh at me when we lost to the Crusaders. The Crusaders are shit. Let's not hide behind Crusaders beating my Hurricanes. Crusaders are shit. We should have done a job. We didn't. Going to Crusadersville and in Canterbury, where all those rednecks are, it's not easy. Look, it's not easy to go there and win. And so I'll challenge anyone to go there and do that. But I think the win against the Jura, the movement we have going forward, I think this Hurricanes team can still do a lot. I haven't been impressed yet, but I've been satisfied with our performances to think we can still win for a title. Do the Chiefs scare me? Yes. The Chiefs should scare every single team in this competition right now. There is not a team on paper that I go, maybe the Reds, and I haven't seen enough from the Reds because they've only played Moana Pacifica, that may not be scared by the Chiefs. And the reason that is because the Reds seem to have the Chiefs number over the last few years. So they know what they're doing against the Chiefs. I don't know how they do it. I don't know what they're doing. But every other team should be scared, and the Reds should be, I guess, starting to fear if they don't get it right, depending on how they go this weekend. So I go, from the outlook of Super Rugby right now, is the Chiefs are so far in front of everyone, and then there's this pack of 10 teams. Because I could literally, I'm going to say 9 teams because I think, I'm going to say 10 teams. Moana Pacifica on the outside, Jura on the outside. If they don't get some wins, if they don't start turning some losses into wins, they could be looking on the outside. But I go, there's 10 teams that are competing for second spot at the moment, is my opinion.
Yeah, look, it's been hard to argue against it. The Brumbies are having to travel to the Chiefs this week. I think they're still not full strength. I mean, that's another win racked up there for the Chiefs. They'll start to build some momentum from that. They start to build some more confidence. But look, we saw last year that things can fall apart when you least expect them to. For the Chiefs, I feel like they had the momentum going into that final, and it didn't serve them well. So it's equally about how they get through the finals period. But yes, through this regular season, it's almost, you could almost see them going perfect. Just looking at how everything lines up for them. I could see a situation where they go undefeated through the regular season.
Yeah, I'm looking. Look, they play Jura away, which is tough. They also play the Blues, but they play them at home. Yeah. The big game, I reckon, on the calendar. The more and more I'm looking at it, and actually, there's 3 big games. There's the first one, the first real challenge I see them having is against your Waratahs in Sydney.
Yeah.
Then they play back-to-back games, not after that, but back-to-back games later in May at Hurricanes, at Crusaders. If they're anywhere around that point there and they're still undefeated, we could have an undefeated team on our hands here. Yeah. Which would be incredible. Yeah, the level of competition right now to me is really, really high. So I look at this Chiefs and I know we're 2 games in. What are we fucking talking about? Undefeated. But you do this. Of course you do this. There's 4 teams still left undefeated, is there?
It's exciting.
Yeah. This is what it's all meant to be. if the Chiefs go undefeated in this type of competition, I'll put it up there as one of the greatest Super Rugby teams of all time. If you know what I mean? Like that's
Yeah.
up there. Like you don't just do that in this level of competition. And people say, "Oh, no South African teams." I get that. I totally get it. But what we've seen through the first 2 weeks of this is going to be a hell of a competitive. Like I do a tipping competition with my family. Who the fuck do you tip each week? Like there's no calculations that you can do to say this other than tipping the Chiefs. That's all I've got at the moment. I tip the Chiefs. And I ship the Hurricanes because that's my heart. Other than that, it's all I have no idea. So
Yeah, looking ahead at this week, let's have a look. We got the Moana Pacific. We got the Highlanders at Moana Pacifica. We got the Dura at the Waratahs, the Brumbies at the Chiefs, the Blues at the Canes, and the Reds at the Force. Now, other than the Brumbies at the Chiefs, because I think that'll be a slaughter, I am salivating over these other 4 matches. I think these will be 4 really good games. Moana Pacifica, their first home game of the season, and they've done pretty well through this year. They've scored some.
70
They've
plus
scored
points.
pretty highly in those games. Only a 1-point loss to the Force, and they had held the ball for 65% of the time against the Reds. And the Highlanders come in on a real hot streak, having just taken down the Blues, and after an exciting game against the Waratahs in round 1. The Waratahs come off a bye. The Dura off 2 tight losses, both by 4 points, both scoring in the 30s both times. One at home, one away.
The Judah, the issue they'll have here, I think, is they played a game in Fiji, then in Hawke's Bay, then over to Sydney. That's obviously a lot of travel time for a team.
A lot of travelling.
Sat in Sydney, played week 1, had a bye, get a play in Sydney week 2. I'm not saying, obviously, the draw works out as the draw works out, and I assume it'll be nicer to the back end for the Jura, but it's worked out really well for the Waratahs to be playing the Jura after a bye with them coming off 2 big travel days, or now 2 travel days.
Yeah.
You're kind of like, I definitely go the Waratahs. It depends. It's hard to at the moment, and I'm sure we'll start to see the picture of how these buys play out, because you probably didn't want to buy this early in the season. If you really want to be honest, you want to get going, you want to get the flow going, you want to be playing week to week. To get a buy second week, you play a week, stop, start, hazardous, a bit like that. They could be a little bit rusty still, Waratahs, but it'll be interesting to see.
Everyone's going to get a buy pretty early on. The Waratahs' next buy will come week 11, so it's not too badly spaced. We'll see how it goes. Chiefs Brumbies. Less said about that, the better.
Lock it down.
Yeah. Blues Canes.
Look, we have something. We have an opportunity here. We have an opportunity. Hurricanes. I'm not just speaking to you Hurricanes players or fans, all right? I'm speaking to the whole world outside of Auckland and the north of New Zealand. Make the moment free, and we can all start to discuss potentially a non-win season for the Blues. Look, I don't want to put it out there, but we could be on that road. So don't fuck it up.
Put it out there. Manifest it. That's what it is. Preach it. Then, possibly the game of the round. Force and Reds.
How many points do you reckon?
This could be over 100. This could be over 100. This could legitimately be over 100. God, I'm so excited to see this game and to see what bullshit gets pulled out of here. Look, the Force have scored 45 points 2 games running. So let's call this 55-45. That's what the end result is going to be. The Reds will win 55-45, because the Reds scored 56 last game.
Yeah.
Odds are there for that happening. Watch this be like a 10-7 game or something. It's been an absolute slugfest.
This is my, I'm going to say it here, this is my game of the round as well. I think this is the challenge for the Force here. Look, you've beaten Moana, you've gone away and done the unthinkable against the Brumbies for the first 5,000 odd days. You get a chance now to stop what has been the better part, one of the top Australian teams for a long time. If you can go from beating Brumbies to beating Reds, you're right up there, Dal. You are in the contention.
You're legit.
For the Reds, this is an opportunity for them as well to set themselves and say, these guys just beat the Brumbies. If we beat them, we can put ourselves up as the best team, because they weren't last year. The Brumbies were. Brumbies have been for the last couple of times. So I'm like, this is an opportunity now for both of these teams to plan out their year. Their year will go from this game.
100%. Well, exciting times in Super Rugby. We're just at the beginning of that season, but Six Nations is coming towards the end of their season, and we had 3 games this past weekend, 2 of which were close, one of which not so close. But some exciting games, nonetheless, in the Six Nations.
Yeah, look, someone said it, and I read an article on it recently. Six Nations takes too long, and it just does. These off weeks are stupid. Play the 6 weeks in a row. Everyone go for it. Like, yes, it's brutal on your body. Maybe have a week off in the middle, 1 week off, but they have multiple weeks off. The Six Nations last as long as a Rugby World Cup.
Yeah.
That's when you put that into words, it's like, that doesn't seem right. I understand, yes, it's 5 very hard games and it's brutal, but that is what rugby's about. We are brutal.
Yeah.
I understand player safety. Depth should be important. You should be able to have depth. So I sit there and I go, I think it should just keep going, because we've got another week off this week as we go through. Ireland looking like they're going to win a Grand Slam. Again, France are the only ones that stay in your way. I got to give you credit where credit is due, my friend. You said in the first game that England versus Ireland was going to decide it. It very much looks like it has, because England now have Italy and Wales and would need France to do the unthinkable against Ireland in Ireland. So that game did decide it. It was like you knew what was going on.
It's like I wrote the script. It's like It's like I paid someone to find out what was being scripted. All sports is scripted. You heard it here. Not for the first time, but confirmed on the rugby podcast. That rugby podcast. Yes. Look. Let's talk a bit about England. They lost by 5 points to Ireland in Ireland. They've then had 2 home games they've won by 1 point. They've now got Italy again at home. So they're having 3 home games in a row, right? And then they go to Wales. Now, look, Wales looks like they couldn't stop a snail with a sledgehammer in their sort of opening weeks, right? 43-0 to France, and then beaten by Italy 22-15. Now, let's remember, this Italy team just got beaten 73-24, so they're not world breakers, this Italian side. However, that being said, this week against Ireland, Wales did put up a bit more of a fight, 18-27. And this is after the Warren Gatland news. So maybe Wales has got a bit more life in there. So England might feel. I don't think England can write off that game against Wales. Nor do I think they can write off the game against Italy. It is at home, so you would give them the edge in there. This game against Scotland, tough affair as it always is between these two countries. What I would say for England, the game, or sort of the English rugby at the moment, could sort of be encapsulated in the last play, or no, not the last play, the last try by Scotland. Right, Scotland had a fantastic breakthrough. The English, though, didn't give up. They chased it and forced it, essentially, instead of to being a try under the post for the conversion would have given Scotland the lead, forced Scotland to go out wide, where they then missed the conversion, and England hung on by 1 point. And I think that's emblematic of what Borthwick is sort of trying to instill in this team. Because what we saw last year was a very similar situation, except they conceded a try and gave up the conversion, or they would give up tries right at the end of the game under the post, easy conversion. That effort, I think, it's almost like the effort is now starting to pay off. It's like they've been given the effort, but now they're starting to see the fruits of it, because it's not as if they're giving 100% more effort. They're giving maybe perhaps now extra 1 or 2% effort compared to maybe even last year, but that 1 or 2% is paying off. They're building up. It's slow, but it's now showing the result, because England's a talented rugby side. They've got talent in there. They can compete with the best in the world, like the Rugby World Cup semi-finalists, right? Now, though, they're starting to get those the swing of the pendulum, or the roll of the dice, is sort of coming back their way a little bit more. And it's not just luck that is making that happen. It is effort, which is, I think, critical for what England needs.
100%. And again, as we said, England's lost a lot of tight games, and they're starting to turn that around, which, again, is what I feared, because it'll keep Borthwick in. And I think they've got so much development and youth coming up through the English system that are very talented, that could make it dangerous for that 2027 Rugby World Cup, which no one wants to hear. 2 things I want to talk on. Welsh, Gatland, we call Gatland out, and Gatland, to his credit, and this is where you see slight differences between Gatland, professional, and Eddie Jones, a wanker.
Yeah.
Gatland fell on his sword. I don't think Gatland was. We discussed this. The main problem. I don't think he was necessarily the problem. What I watched though was an inspired Wales team. I think the issue that Anscombe had was, especially when I watched it. The issue that Wales had is that Anscombe wasn't fit to go in those first few matches, because God, he makes that team look a lot better. Not like I'm saying because he's a former New Zealander, but he's from New Zealand. The wingers as well, both for Wales, look fantastic. They reminded me a lot more of a Welsh winger who breaks tackles, scores some freakish tries. Just missed out on scoring a freakish try. I think that was Rogers or me, one of the two. And then Blair Murray at the back, another one. Beat 11 defenders. Another New Zealander who's converted over to Wales. I'm not saying this just because they're New Zealanders, but I'm saying there might be some promise. Look what Ireland did. Wales could do their own thing here. That's all I'm saying. But I watched that game and Wales came up. Their attack just looked so much better than in those first two games. And I was so much more impressed with their willingness. I think they had more players available to be selected. I just think, the Welsh team grew a step because of what Gatland had to do, which was to fall on the sword. Which, again, you've got to give him a lot of credit because there's a lot being said about him, which I don't think was necessarily right. But I think it was time for him to go, and he understood that. And I don't think he could have changed anything with his coaching style and with what he was doing to make them a better team. And that's not on him, is what I'd say. The second person who must now fall on their fucking sword, all right? Gregor Townsend, I'm talking to you. I picked you Scottish for a second straight year, and you've gone and fucked it up. Not only have you gone and fucked it up, you lost the Calcutta Cup. And that is the most important cup to win. 5 years in a row you had it, Scotland. I said, this is Scotland's goal. You know, football, soccer, they talk about golden generations and this was the goal. This is Scotland's golden generation. I know Finn Russell missed some kicks and lost them the game. Cool. He's still the best 10 in the United Kingdom, in my opinion. And I go, okay, well, if you're going to play that, you've got the best 10. To me, you've got a couple of the best wingers. You've got a hell of a forward pack. I go, what else do you need to get a Six Nations title across the line? Because Ireland haven't been at their top either. And you've been embarrassed. You have been embarrassed, and Scotland should be disappointed. And Scotland need to let this guy go. Again, I sat there and I went, I just don't see what they see in Scotland rugby with it. I don't see it, because to me, the Scotland team every year should be pushing for a Six Nations title, and they still haven't. And this year is probably one of the biggest disappointments. Like, what's going wrong? I need to know, and I can't find it out myself. Gregor Townsend's got to go. I think you've got to find a coach that's capable.
Yeah, you've got to find a coach that's going to deploy the talent in the best way. Speaking of talent, France. 73 points. Look, we were looking for a 100-point game. This one fell just short, 97 points. Italy scoring 24. Look, I watched the highlights of this game, and it felt close up until about 50 or 60 minutes in, I feel like, and then France just ran away with it. But Italy scored first. They were keeping things. It was tight. It was keeping close, and then the floodgates just opened at the end of the game. Look, our favorite player, Ange Capuzzo, sorry. He put a little shimmy step on Antoine Dupont that is the tightest step I've ever seen in the tightest amount of space, and just that little movement, put off the best player in the world and got him through and made an incredible line break. Like, I saw him run into that spot, and it looked like he was about to run into three players. And I thought, this guy's getting sat down his ass. He's 75 kilos soaking wet, and he somehow got through the line just from that little move. And so it shows you rugby is a game for all body shapes and sizes. So we were doing inclusivity before anyone else did. But France, they were very exclusive to Italy after they scored their 24 points. I think France was at about 28 at that point, and they said, enough is enough. We're going to score the next 50 points here, or next 45 points, whatever you have it, and demolished Italy. Now, France are currently ahead of England due to a bonus point in the Six Nations. However, they do have that game against Ireland coming up, not this weekend, but next weekend on the 9th of March, that look for this determines the tournament essentially. Essentially, this game will determine who will win Six Nations this year. Um, so all three of those teams, Ireland, France, and England, still have a chance, and it comes down to it. But it's in Ireland. Ireland have been in, good form. Um, you know, Probably not as good a form as they would like, but still good enough to be undefeated at this stage. Um, you know, Bundy Aki, another New Zealander, that image of him, the mixture of blood and wet turf dripping down his face, iconic picture now of rugby. Um, and I think a lot of people are saying he sealed his place as the 12 for the Lions tour. Um, so it'll be a tough going for France to try and overcome Ireland. And we saw France fall short against England in England. So we know, and as you've been saying for years, my friend, the French do not travel well. They prefer to play at home.
Yeah, look, French will look back at that English game, as you've just mentioned, and be gutted. Realistically, as you said, this should be a showdown for the Six Nations between these two teams coming up. But because France couldn't take their opportunities and couldn't handle balls on the day against the English, it's one of those ones again where now three teams are going for one spot, obviously to win it, and I just think Ireland are going to be too good to stop at home against the French. But one hell of a game coming up that one, so be tuned for that. Look, we've talked a lot about
Scotland. Wales should be decent as well. I reckon. Like if
totally.
Wales take some of that form, Scotland's on a bit of a dip. As we discussed, this could be a big upset here.
What better way for Wales to end the Townsend reign than have a completely new coach come in?
It could be. It could be it. It could be what you need, my friend.
Talking about coaches, my friend.
Yes.
The Wallabies coach has opened up after this year. Obviously, Schmidt has turned the sinking ship and managed to patch up the holes and have got you going in the right direction for a British and Irish Lions series. But after that, you need someone else to take over. Who do you want? There's a favourite in there, an old favourite, but who do you want?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Schmidt first a little bit because, there's been some questions about why would Schmidt leave? Did Rugby Australia not give him a good enough offer? So on and so forth. Schmidt has come out and basically said that he needs to be able to spend more time in New Zealand because he has family members with special needs that he needs to be around. And fair enough to him. And also fair enough to Rugby Australia that they've said, being the Australian coach means you need to be in Australia majority of the time. And I think both parties have settled in that very well. Schmidt still wants to be involved, potentially in an oversight or like mentoring role or something like that, which I think would be great. But it sounds like a good relationship, a good agreement on both sides, and you have to respect Schmidt for basically saying, "I can't commit enough time to this. I can't commit to it the time that it deserves." So the two main names being tossed around right now are Les Kiss and Michael Cheika. Now, Cheika we know is a good coach. Great success with the Wallabies, great success with Argentina. However, did not respond well to oversight. It was his way or the highway, which it's not. You need more collaboration in rugby these days, right? Take a look at South Africa, for example, in this last World Cup. What a example. What a great show of collaborative coaching there. Of course, there's a case of too many cooks, and I think the situation Cheika was in with Rugby Australia was not a great one, and that was a case where there was probably too many cooks. I worry that for Cheika, that has turned him off that sort of collaboration coaching that the Wallabies would need. Les Kiss, look, he has been a good coach for the Reds. I think it will really turn on how the Reds do this year, how he does with that talent. Dan McKellar is also another potential. Stephen Larkham has had his name thrown in the ring a few times, though he's always seemed a little bit hesitant because he's a relatively newer coach. So, look, I think if we're looking at just those two front runner names of Cheika and Kiss, I'd probably go with Kiss at this stage, just because we've seen what we got out of Cheika, and it was good and it was exciting. It wasn't enough to win us a World Cup, and it ended badly. And I'm worried that some of that may get carried forward. I think it's better to start with a fresh slate. Like, look what happened the last time we went back to a former Wallabies coach. We were out of the Rugby World Cup in the group stage. I also like fresh ideas being brought in, innovation. I think that when teams do like, I think I said it in our last podcast, right? I think you quoted me at the start here where you said Schmidt's coming and righted the ship, right? He's turning around. He's done that cultural change. Now we need that next step. We need that innovative mind that can build off the good culture and utilize the talent to its best effect.
Yeah, look, I don't think you can really go too wrong here. I think if you get Checker, he's a successful coach who's done it all over the world, which is awesome. Like, that's exactly what you need. And strong personality, which is what Australian rugby needs as well. I think for the fans, he'll be well accepted again. And I think because it's such a new board and new Rugby Australia, I think it'll work out still. But again, I see your hesitancies and I understand why. And I also wonder how he'll be able to work with Joe Smith and if he'll work with Joe Smith. My assumption is he's a professional enough guy and coach that he will. Like, he's worked all over the world. I'm sure he'll be able to. Again, I like the idea of like a Liz Kiss, whose quality has turned the Reds around from, Brad Thorne, who did Brad Thorne pretty much played that culture change role at the Reds, and then Les Kiss is taking them on to better things. Stephen Larker, although he's a new coach, he's still been successful with the Brumbies, and again, with Joe Smith sit above him or in and around his inner circle, could be a really helpful thing. Dan McKellar, as much as I think if he had stayed with the Brumbies and been with the Brumbies up until now, and the Brumbies had his same mistakes, I think same success, I think he would have.
Yeah.
But I think because he's just stepped into the Waratahs role, he'll sit back and try and do that for 2-3 years and then see maybe after the Rugby World Cup where Australian rugby's at, or leading into it, whatever's happening is happening. And then we kind of, I think is it Cronin, the Rebels, the Force coach. Again, how good his year is this year could decide. Simon Cron, sorry. Could decide as well. Like, he's got massive reps. He's a young guy, I believe. Oh, look, he's New Zealand born. Interesting there. It doesn't say his age. But yeah, so he's got massive reps. Again, he's turning that Western Force, if they can be a winner this year, does two New Zealanders at the helm of Australia suddenly start to sound really attractive rugby get going. Like we're all of a sudden we're starting to see what teams are doing. Look, if you can't beat them, join them. Ireland did it. You just steal enough of their players. Wales are on their way. Take enough of their players. And then in the end, you just take their coaches at the Wallabies because you obviously don't want their players because that's a rivalry we don't really touch. Actually, Alex Hodgman, again, was an All Black, now a Wallaby. But, again, I see there's any opportunity, any way Australian rugby goes, you can make a good argument for it. And which is a really good spot because a few years ago, post Eddie Jones, we were like, what the fuck going on? How do we deal with this?
Yeah.
So I'm interested, but I don't think you can make a wrong decision if Joe Smith's still in the picture. That's kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's what I agree with that. I agree with that. I think even as much as I advocated just then for Kiss over Checker, I would not be unhappy with Checker as a coach.
Yeah. Alrighty. That is us for this week. We will be back next week. We'll make sure we get into a routine schedule to keep you up to date with everything going on in Super Rugby, all over the globe. For now, I've been Luke. That has been Husey. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Peace.